And I was kind of a standard of care, more traditional doctor, didn't think much about lifestyle until I had started having my own health issues, gaining weight, chronic back pain. So I wasn't happy with that. I went into paleo and Whole30, and my eyes opened up to this new way of healing. That was really the catalyst for me, where I was seeing people being in ICU who are otherwise healthy, but they're metabolically unhealthy when you look at them. I mean, they're overweight or obese, but also they have the typical diseases, diabetes, heart disease. You can see their tray is full of junk. There's really nothing on the tray that's really edible, from juice to cereal to the ice cream. When I see these conditions coexist, which they often coexist in the same patient, I get really excited. And I think they sense that excitement that we can fix this. We're on your side. We're going to do this. The goal is not to have medication. We're not going to supplement you to treat you. We have to change the diet. To this day, every time I stop a pill, I'm more excited than the patient.
Dr. Elie Jarrouge from Houston, Texas. He is the very first physician we have at Revero, and now that we've grown our clinical staff. But Elie, thanks for doing this. And I guess just as by way of introduction, I know I interviewed you several years ago. Give us your background, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Where do I start? I'll go straight to the medical training. So I'm from Lebanon, but went to medical school in Buffalo, New York, and then came to Houston for residency at Baylor College of Medicine. I did internal medicine training, and then I did nephrology, kidney disease training. And I started working in the hospital as a hospitalist, with basically taking care of patients in the hospital for all kind of acute care issues. And I was a standard of care, more traditional doctor, believed in medicine, believed in medications. I didn't think much about lifestyle until I had started having my own health issues, which happened coincidentally while I was as a hospitalist. I was gaining weight, chronic back pain. I developed insulin resistance. Insulin A1C hit 5.7. So I was starting to become pre-diabetic, blood pressure in the 140s. So I wasn't happy with that. And then my back was continued to give out from chronic back pain and muscle spasms. And I dive into health related, figured natural way of healing. And I went into paleo and Whole30. I just tried to have desperate means improving. And to my surprise, I lost 15, 20 pounds within the first couple of months. My back pain resolved, my blood pressure improved. And my eyes opened up to this new way of healing. But it took me a couple of years to really learning about it, listening to podcasts. When you came on the scene, other people come on keto things. I started to learn a lot. And eventually it started to change my approach with my hospital patients and advising them to heal using diet. But I never had a way to follow them. And then when COVID hit, that was really the catalyst for me, where I was seeing people dying and being in ICU who are otherwise healthy, but they're metabolically unhealthy when you look at them. I mean, they're overweight, obese, but also they have the typical diseases, diabetes, heart disease. And that was when I realized COVID was more of a metabolic disease that affected primarily the sickest people. And then I started coaching. This is when I started moving to the online sphere where people were all remote. I started coaching on the side and helping people come off medication. I found great success with obesity, diabetes, hypertension. And people were just coming off medications that I could never accomplish in previous 9-10 years. And that's when I really got into it. You found me early in 2020, I think, when I started to begin to coach. And then we met again a couple of years later. And then when Revero came about, so I have my own remote practice, but also when you guys needed that clinical team, I quickly jumped on the opportunity because I knew this was a huge opportunity to reach them.
Yeah, you're at Texas Medical Center there in Houston. It's like one of the biggest hospital centers in the country, or in the world for that matter. I mean, it's just a huge concentration. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's one of the most, it's like the epicenter of medicine as it's been a practice today. It's a huge, multi-billion-dollar facilities, quite honestly. And the shortcoming in that, because we don't include that lifestyle component. And even if you try, talk to me about the level of support you had as a hospitalist, as an internist for making dietary changes or lifestyle changes. Is there any built-in infrastructure for that versus what we are building at Revero?
Yeah, nothing compared to Revero. The infrastructure is a typical standard of care. you have an army of dietitians, an army of nurses and people, and then the kitchen. Basically, everything complies with the dietary guidelines, which was really, you can tell it's junk food. You mean someone with a heart attack, or you can see their tray is full of junk. There's really nothing on the tray that's really edible, from juice to cereal to ice cream to kind of everything between. You cannot even order low carb or try to dictate how you want things done. You can do high protein, low protein, and then you fight with dietitians all the time. So people have support. There's dietitians, but they're so misinformed that it was even worth arguing with them because they have to follow protocol. So nothing like Revero, especially.
Even outside of the hospital, I can tell you, as I practice both in and out as a surgeon, I had my outpatient clinic and then my inpatient surgery practice. There just was nothing. All I could do was, hey, go read this book, or hey, go watch this video. And that, as you probably have discovered, sometimes it takes a lot of support, a lot of hands-on, a lot of hand-holding, a lot of constant feedback, which it's just not available to the average physician working in a hospital system, employed system, even a clinic in many cases. It takes a lot of additional resource, which unfortunately our healthcare system today does not support. And so we had to build this separately. Let me ask you about the suitability. What conditions do you think are you comfortable with treating in this digital format? Because you can't do everything. I can't do surgery online. That's not going to happen. But what are the things you realistically have successfully been able to treat as either a Revero physician or in your own coaching practice digitally?
Anything that hasn't reached an acute deterioration it's rooted in diet and lifestyle. It's a dietary problem at its root, and then you can fix it by dietary changes. And for that, you don't need a stethoscope. You can really digitally, if you can see the patient, support them remotely with some measurements, but generally really about coaching. You can guide them back to health with eating right. So they ate their way into disease. They can eat their way out of disease. If they're not dead, you can help them remotely. So I think you can reach diabetes, obesity, hypertension, fatty liver, autoimmune disease, a lot of skin issues, mental health, you name it. Anything rooted in metabolic issues or food, inflammatory diseases, you can affect with.
And I would certainly say pretty much most chronic diseases, to include even acute diseases, but again, that's going to be better served in the hospital if they could actually feed people correctly instead of feeding them the pancakes and syrup and orange juice and then chasing them with insulin shots because they're on a sliding scale. It's funny how we do that in the hospital and think it's like, oh, it's just normal.
I mean, I remember one time, early days when I was starting to think like that, this lady was showing up to the hospital for recurrent hypoglycemia, and she was borderline diabetic. So I knew what was going on, but the endocrinologist, you would think they know. They put on glucose drip, dextrose drip. So basically fixing the problem with the cause of the problem. So I had to intervene and basically go off script and tell her to just stop the fluids, stop eating carbs. Let's focus on protein for the next few days. And then, of course, the glucose stopped crashing because of that. So, yeah, we can definitely make a difference in acute care if it's dietary.
Yeah, I know you, because we follow each other on social media. I posted a little thing about what we're doing right now, treating chronic disease with nutrition, which should have been the standard of care from the get-go, but medicine has veered so far from that path that no one really does it anymore. And so the fact that you're doing it on a daily basis makes you literally among the world's leading experts on this particular topic. And it's not some nutrition PhD that doesn't see patients or some dietitian that doesn't really treat disease. It's really the interface of the physician, which has actually taken the time and has on a daily basis seen what nutrition, how it works and how it impacts the disease and knows how to implement it and make changes and so on and so forth. So you become the expert in this very new and rapidly growing field, I might add. There's a lot of physicians that are waking up and getting this. Let me ask you, because as you mentioned, scalability of this, when you're doing it by yourself as a physician, you've got to figure out, how do I get this information to the patient? How do I get the feedback all the time? Can I get a coach to help me out? Because as you realize, I'm sure you realize the coaches can do a lot of the heavy lifting, the stuff that you don't need to do, but that needs to be done. And without that part in place, it's hard to be effective. And so let me ask you, talk to me about the value of having an entire team versus trying to go it alone solo.
Yeah, telling people to eat low carb or eat clean, that's the easy part because we tell that to masses, to hundreds of thousands of people, and people still struggle. So there's a human nature involved. There is But doctors were telling conventional doctors there's like old dogma and teaching. So we really have to rewire people's brain and re-educate them on teach them all the old stuff. So it takes a lot of repetition, a lot of hand holding, a lot of guidance. So even physician, like I taught myself along the way. I was insecure initially because I wasn't sure what to do. I knew it worked on me. So I had to fine tune coaching skills and medical skills. So definitely it takes taking the patient, understanding where they are emotionally, psychologically, physically, health-wise, the burden of medicine, and then show them the light that there is hope, and show them other cases and how we lived it by example. So we get credibility that way. And then really meet with them, almost talk to them daily, weekly, as long as it takes. Some people are more hands off and some people require a lot of hand holding. But when they see the change, they get motivated. People wait for motivation to come change, but really it's the other way around. It's changing. Fake it until you make it, and then you become really motivated. And then it's magical, and the compounding value of doing the right thing every day. It's hard to explain or express to PhDs and RDs and MDs if they don't really see that transition from poor health, 10 medications, multiple diagnoses to thriving off all medications.
Yeah, I host a weekly and probably soon to be twice weekly meeting with the Revero patients. And it's fun to see these people over time get healthier and healthier. Let me just ask you about that, because as a hospitalist, you see a lot of people that are repeat customers. There's always sick. You seem like you're just spinning your wheels a little bit. How is your happiness with practicing medicine now compared to then? Is there a difference? Is it more fun to practice medicine this way? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm almost a guilty feeling. I don't feel like I'm working because I'm doing something I'm passionate about. Yeah, you get tired at the end of the week, but come Sunday afternoon, you're looking forward to hit the ground running again the next week. When I was in the hospital, the reward was helping people survive and get out of the hospital, but it was very taxing emotionally. I always dread Mondays when getting on service again. This is a completely different game. Whether I'm doing on my own or with Revero, you look forward to, because they're getting better. Okay, who am I going to stop medicine on today? You look at the weight coming down, the blood pressure coming down, the glucose coming down, and you really look at the labs improving, and you get excited to touch base with them and tell them, hey, let's stop this medicine. And they get super excited about it. And then there's the community. I joined on the community meeting the other day when you were in Europe. That was fun too. They support each other. They talk about their own experience. So that's been really fun. You can't find that in a clinic in a 7-minute visit. So the time invested and put with these patients makes all.
What do you, when you get a new patient, I mean, what are the patients you just are excited to see? Is there somebody you like, you got them teed up and you're like, oh man, I'm going to be able to just totally knock this out of the park? Who are the patients coming in that you're super excited to get a hold of?
Not in a sadistic way, but I love the sickest patients. So when I got a healthy patient, I find that when I get a little bit better, but I really like to help the sickest, the morbidly obese, the one who can't walk, the autoimmune stuff. Type 2 diabetes is my favorite because it's like the cause of all other morbidities, heart disease and cancer. It's like a higher risk for all of that. So I love to reverse that. Hypertension. So when I see these conditions coexist, which they often coexist in the same patient, I get really excited. And I think they sense that excitement that we can fix this and we're on your side. We're going to do this. The goal is not to have medication. We're not going to supplement you to treat you. We have to change the diet. And so they can tell we're not selling them a product. We are giving them time. They're subscribing to connect with a coach, connect with a physician. They know they have a team on their side. I get excited about it.
Yeah, I can see, because you can make such a big difference in often a short period of time. Just since you've been working at Revero, what are some of the patients you've seen get better? What some of the medications you've been able to discontinue?
Yeah, the bread and butter, obesity, a lot of people are overweight, even like it's a common denominator. People who are metabolically unhealthy, there's some weight issues, a lot of hypertension, diabetes, and autoimmune stuff. Definitely, I'm surprised with the amount of skin issues that's come along, psoriasis and acne and eczema. Those things clear up within a few weeks. You get weight starts to come down. Type 2 diabetes is very quick to respond, especially if they're on high risk medications. So we monitor them very closely from even before they started the diet, start checking and even adjusting medication before they hit the ground running, because it could be that fast when you drop carbohydrates to under 30 grams that your glucose is going to respond so quickly that being on medication become too dangerous. I've taken people off insulin, off diabetes pills, off blood pressure pills. And then other people have their acne and the skin ointments, things like that, stopped. Acid reflux medicine have been stopped. I haven't had a chance yet to deal with heavy biologics yet, but as soon as we have these patients, we're going to definitely help them come off these drugs.
Yeah, and the fact that you're pulling people off diabetes meds and antihypertensives and other medications, it's probably not something you did a whole lot of in the traditional practice. Is that fair to say?
No, absolutely not. We're very quick at prescribing. We know how to prescribe. But I know historically when patients would come in and they have 10, 15 drugs, that nobody asks why are they on this drug. And everybody kicks the can. Oh, I didn't prescribe it, so I'm not going to stop it. So it's very compartmentalized instead of looking at the patient as a whole. So we don't know, doctors don't know, residents don't know how to stop medicine unless there's an emergency. Someone comes and passes out because the blood pressure is too low, then they stop a blood pressure pill, or glucose crashing and patient in the coma, then they stop a diabetes medicine. But be able to foresee that and guide them away from these medicines safely, because also sometimes you can't just stop them completely without kind of a gradual titration. So yeah, there's no education in that. And it's an art more than a science.
Yeah, and that's an important point, because a lot of people, and I'm all for people changing their diet, but some people really do need to do it under the supervision of a physician, because a lot of medications, if they're stopped too quickly or if they're not stopped appropriately, a lot of problems can result from that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. 100%. And I've seen the side effect of both extremes. I've had patients who weren't checking their blood pressure and they weren't stopping the blood pressure medicine, pass out and end up in the hospital, not with Revero. This was years before. And they ended up having $1 million workup thinking they had a heart attack. And I kept telling them, it's just a blood pressure pill. He didn't measure it, he passed out. And then you got people who get too eager and stop too quickly, and then your sugar is all over the place, blood pressure is too high. So patients, remind people, it took you years to get to this point. So it's going to take a few weeks, a few months to really reverse it, not as long as getting here, but you have to do it safely.
Yeah, one of the things, and thank you by the way, at Revero, you helped to develop a lot of the clinical protocols. And we have a lot of diseases and they have unique medications and unique requirements for deprescription and how to manage that. And that's something that all of our new clinicians that come on board have access to that. They learn that. So we're all on the same page. And I think that's something that, again, a lot of physicians out there, whether they be MDs, nurse practitioners, PAs, or whatever, they don't really have a lot of experience in this realm and how to do it in a logical, kind of somewhat tested way. And so as someone who joins Revero as a provider, they get that training and education. We've developed an entire training module for physicians and so on and so forth.
Yeah, the physicians have to go through education about the lifestyle, about different foods, about the medications, and also they have to take quizzes as well to make sure they understand the material. And there are the clinical protocols. Every condition we treat at Revero currently has a clinical protocol, and it's dumbed down as much as possible. Like nothing is left for guess. To walk through the process, especially the complicated ones like diabetes and hypertension, what to look for, what numbers to look for, when to start backing off, what order of medicine, which classes are stopped first. And also, inevitably, some people are not doing the work or doing, but it's not working well. We need medication. So we're not anti-medications. We just have to know which medication to order, and we pick the safest ones. And then we try to get them off as soon as they make progress. But yeah, we want clinicians to believe in their lifestyle. Someone who's traditional and they only want to prescribe medicine, obviously it's not something Revero is going to be interested in, but someone who had experience or really believes, but they don't have the surrounding or the clinical practice to support them that way. We want these people to apply. We're going to help them learn. A lot of people are doing it and learning on the go, but these clinical protocols will help people get comfortable with taking patients off medication.
Yeah. And one thing, this is almost a new field. This is almost like a new specialty, more or less, nutritional medicine, nutritional therapy, or something along those lines. And as we continue to grow as a company and as more and more providers share their experiences, we'll undoubtedly learn more as we go about how lifestyle nutrition impacts specific diseases. And so we will continue to adapt and adjust as that time goes by, I'm sure. Do you, as far as we also plan on publishing our data as we collect it, and knowing what the normal standard of care, normal storyline that most people play, are you fairly confident that our results are going to be at least on par, perhaps better than the standard of care?
No doubt about it. We already saw it anecdotally. Glucose drops quickly, blood pressure drops. You take people off medications. So if you have the numbers and you see how many medicines stopped and all these conditions reversed, statistically, you're going to show a drastic difference between conventional care and lifestyle medicine. There's no pill that reverses diabetes or reverses blood pressure. Otherwise, we would stop them. So including the GLP-1 wonder drugs, they do wonder, but they also can't stop them if you really want to cure the disease.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. And you mentioned GLP-1 receptor agonists. They're expensive. They're not, especially in the U.S., they seem like jack up the prices compared to other countries. But nonetheless, we have incredibly expensive healthcare in this system to the tune of something like $4.5 trillion annually, and probably even more than that with more recent numbers. I think we'll be able to save a lot of money on this. What do you is your gut feeling that the overall cost of annual care for someone with one of our patients versus standard of care would be much cheaper?
1,000%. If they come off several drugs or several $100s in cost, even if they're not paying out of pocket, which a lot of people do, just the cost of the insurance companies and then downstream the premium or taxpayers has a growing effect that saves people a lot of money. And there's a cost of missing work. There's a lot of stuff that you can't capture that way. So definitely it's going to show obvious cost cutting. And that's part of it. At the end of the day, as businesses, if they want to subscribe their pay employees, they want to have the bottom line improved. So even if they don't care about their health, the financial incentive is going to be there because they're going to save a ton of money.
Yeah, not to get political, but it's hard not to today because we're right in the middle of a huge election, and there's some people at least on the Republican side talking about this "Make America Healthy Again," with maybe targeting some of this chronic disease. Are you hopeful that there will be something done on a national level to combat whoever gets elected? Maybe enough people will wake up to this and maybe make some changes. I'm somewhat skeptical that will happen very rapidly, just knowing how bureaucracy works and all the legal hurdles and the roadblocks and the fights that these companies will put up. But what are your thoughts on the future of medicine in general outside of Revero?
I think they're going to face a tremendous amount of pushback because every person or clinician who put these guidelines are compromised by their funding. You got to go through the whole list of who funds who from the top down. So people are not going to be okay with requiring less drugs, less medications, like on a business side, not in a sinister way. So I know it will change. I think people are waking up, but we can't wait for guidelines to change. If you're a helpless kid in school or a patient in a nursing home or in a hospital, having some sort of guidelines about what's getting served to them is going to be hugely beneficial. But an average person walking the street who's completely free to eat what they want, they have the responsibility as well to really take action and change their own diet. Yes, it's hard. Junk food is everywhere. But if I did it and we all did it, we all were overweight and have other issues, they can do it. You just have to have the will. But politically speaking, hopefully it will happen. It's only going to make things better. And there's things outside of just junk food. We were learning about all these chemicals in the food supply. So even if you're eating clean and you're having glyphosate and all other chemicals, that also would be hard to tell if you're eating and how to stop it. So I think all of us, we need to come together, the individual, the system, the politics, to make America getting it healthy.
Well, let me add, this is always the gorilla, the elephant in the room, or the 800-pound gorilla in the room, is a lot of people will go on a low-carb diet or a keto diet or a carnivore diet, and sometimes their LDL cholesterol will go up. Now, we think the reason for that may just have to do with them becoming leaner, and there's some good data that suggests that's the case. But a lot of people will get pushback from their physician to the point where they'll say, hey, you got to stop this diet, and we want to put you on a lipid-lowering drug, whether it be a statin or PCSK9 or what have you. There's a number of drugs you can do. How do you manage the nuance around that? Because I think it's a nuanced topic, and I think a lot of people treat it as a very black and white topic when I think it's quite a gray topic. How do you manage that?
Yeah, so I do tell people that this is a controversial topic and it's not standard advice, but it's a common experience that we're going to see people as they get healthier, the LDL may or may not rise, especially if you get leaner. And I see it all the time. And whether that's a bad thing or a good thing, it's to be determined. But so far, there's no evidence that having that in a context of good metabolic health, that you're at a worse state of health. Yeah. So there's more data needed and the research is happening. So I do tell them that. I do tell them that your doctor's probably going to push back. And I explain the pros and cons. And I put the decision back on the patient because with not enough research to back me up, I can't say it like, don't stop statin, for example, while the LDL is 400 without some sort of deeper dive into the cardiovascular. So, but I do tell people, if you're metabolically unhealthy, you have diabetes, obesity, hypertension, your risk of having cardiovascular disease is very high, regardless of your LDL. And if the opposite is true, if you're metabolically very healthy, you're less likely to have any of these things, regardless of your LDL. So focus on improving what you can, which is metabolic health, whether it's a combination of things, whether it's a visceral fat, inflammation, insulin resistance, all these things, you can target and improve all of them, come off medications. And then the trade-off is your LDL may go up. And then which one would you take? I personally would take a high LDL with perfect everything else rather than a perfect LDL and bad everything else. And they say, what about having something in between? And we can tweak the diet. But again, are we treating a number or are we treating the patient? I can make the LDL go down. Nick Norris did it with 700 eggs. It still dropped to 20%. It's not clear what's right for LDL, but it is clear that if you don't have metabolic disease, you don't have as a high of a risk of cardiovascular disease. It is nuanced. And I tell people that decision has to be between you and your doctor. We're not forcing that statin on them. So we don't manage it. If they're on it, we tell them with our opinion, but we also leave that decision to them based on the pros and cons.
Yeah, as we have been scaling up Revero, we've been hiring new clinicians, new coaches, engineering team, the whole team, the operations team, the sales team, so on and so forth. One of the things with the coaches, because you work directly with the coaches on a daily basis, and I think we had 3,000 people apply to be our coaches, so we had a lot to choose from. So we've really picked the best of the best. And what has been your experience working with our coaches?
Oh, they're awesome. So when you join I'm on a group chat with the patient and the coach. I can't stay behind the scene, but I can see the amount of passion and care that they put into checking on the patients, giving them tips, supporting them emotionally. Sometimes I see like therapy sessions going on between different things. And a lot of it is really a lot of emotional support. So these coaches have been amazing. They messaging all times of the day, respond to people, the very timely responses, and they escalate things to me or the clinician when there's a medical question. And patients love that part, a proactive approach from the coaches. So they're doing a great job.
Yeah, I think as a physician, because as an orthopedic guy, I usually got the phone call when the disaster struck. I said, someone's in the hospital, they broke with their femur sticking out of their leg or something. It's always bad news when you get a call. It was never like, hey, tell that guy to put a seatbelt on before he crashes his car, or something like. We never got the chance to be proactive and before, but now I think with the coaches, you can maybe cut off. Is that fair to say you may be cutting some things off at the pass ahead of time before it has a chance to turn back?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because we monitor, we track. If they have high blood pressure or diabetes, we're tracking these numbers. And if we see trend downward or upward, we intervene before we hit any emergencies. Luckily, we haven't had any emergency related to the diet approach or changing medications. People sometimes slack off or regress, and that's okay. They're human. Sometimes we may have to restart their medicine, but we always toe to toe with their clinical progress and to avoid any problems.
Yeah, and obviously, when you're working as a hospitalist, you're going to see acute care. You're going to see people that crash and they end up in the ER and then they get admitted to the hospital. But even as a clinician, you might see someone typically maybe every 3 months, every 6 months. If they're really acute, maybe a few more frequent visits like that. But now that you have the chance to have almost daily real-time feedback available if needed, that's got to be so much easier to course correct rather than even acute 3 months, because then you're like, oh my, a lot can happen in 3 months and a lot can go awry in 3 months. And now you have the chance to, again, nip things in the bud. And that's got to save people from having to end up in the ER or at urgent care, or God forbid they have a real bad event that causes serious harm.
Absolutely. Even we have systems in place where the blood pressure running too high, too low, glucose too high or too low. We get alerts to check and intervene right then. Even we have to pick up the phone. The patients are a phone call away from us. So the coach always ahead of it. But even as a physician, I'm getting alerts about blood pressure and glucose and jumping in if needed to make things better. So we're avoiding a lot of emergencies, if you will, and side effects from medications by avoiding these medications as well.
Yeah, if we looked at our healthcare spending in the United States and you think how much of it goes to episodic acute care, you're talking billions and billions of dollars, and you could probably avoid a high percentage of that by a process such as we have in place here. What was I going to say? Oh, thinking about a lot of our physicians come work with us part-time, and that's maybe a good way to get your feet in the door to something like this, because you can still have the safety net of you can go do your day job, and then if you want to have some fun, I guess, if I'd call it fun, you can get in here, come in there, work one day a week or something like that, and see something different, see if it suits you, and then maybe you eventually do this more full-time or something along those lines.
Yeah, and that's actually the way we prefer it right now, because this is still in the early phases of the launch. We don't hire people full-time right away for many reasons. It's a completely jump in a completely different field. They have their day job. So we encourage people to continue their jobs. And then if they can commit about 10 hours a week to work like this, we highly encourage them to do that. Then they can hone in their skills. They can make a difference. And if they're really good match and they're growing, and they're making a big difference, and they want to put more time into Revero, that can transition over time into more hours and eventually full-time employment, I'm sure. So definitely don't feel like there's conflict if you have other jobs. I run my own private thing, and I do this with Revero, and there's not enough doctors to do this. And everybody has different needs. So Revero is targeting the masses, so make it more affordable and be able to employ it at scale. So we need more clinicians. So we open in several states. We're going to open all 50 states eventually, but next is California, and that's a big state. So we need to hire more to have people licensed in all states.
Yeah, and because you're part of the hiring process, I know you interview a lot of our candidates. What are you looking for specifically? Are you looking for anything particular when you interview someone?
Yeah, the main thing is believe in the mission and believe in this lifestyle. We're not looking for someone who just wants a job, who just traditional, just want to put some hours and go home. That's not what we're looking for. There's plenty of jobs like that. We want someone who really wants to make a difference and who believes in that lifestyle approach to reverse chronic diseases. So people who have personal experience with it are always obviously positive, because that creates more drive to help. People who have done this in real life with other patients, we also like those people because the experience there can help. But anybody who just believes in it, but they haven't had a chance to apply it, they're welcome to apply. But basically, we want people who believe in that mission of holistic approach.
Yeah, I think you can go to Revero.com and get an application and so on and so forth. Let me just go to the other side of the equation, because the patients, what are you looking for in a patient when you get a new patient? Because not everybody is appropriate for us. There's people that this may not be the best fit. So what are you looking for ideally in a patient to join us?
Yes. So we can't treat everything under the sun. So in this phase of Revero, we're treating mainly metabolic diseases, obesity, diabetes, type 2 diabetes. We're not yet doing type 1 diabetes, which was not reversible, but we're not managing type 1 diabetes, hypertension, high triglycerides, and then things that come with it, fatty liver and stuff like that. But then we get the autoimmune stuff from Crohn's to ulcerative colitis, psoriasis. We get joint stuff, rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, and all these big ones we're targeting, and then a lot of skin issues. So what we want from patients, anybody's welcome to apply. And we have a lot of people who are so motivated, they're already healthy, they want to join Revero, and we're not turning them away because we'd love them to get healthier. But if you're sick and you have issues to fix, it's even more important to join Revero to help you. So there's all these conditions. Some people are getting disappointed when we can't treat their right now. For example, we're not treating thyroid diseases because it requires a little bit more testing and it takes longer time. It may come in the future, but we're not. So they get disappointed. They want a one shop for all where they want to manage everything under the sun. And we're not a primary care practice, but we do take over management of the conditions that we treat. So we want people who are One, they want to change their lifestyle. Well, luckily right now, people who are applying, they want to do this. So that already takes care of itself, self-selective. And people who are willing to change their diet drastically and be patient and work with a coach, work with a physician to get off medications safely. And then we may have to communicate with the doctors, but at the end of the day, they need to take responsibility. We're here to support them to fix it.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. And I, like you said, I think we will probably eventually venture over to hypothyroidism or thyroid disease and probably expand our scope of practice as time goes by. I see a few other things that we could certainly take care of given time and some of the expertise. But most of our providers are now coming from a more of a primary care generalist background. Maybe eventually we get some specialists, depending on how big we get. We might have a need for certain specialists in certain areas. Perhaps we have a rheumatologist or a GI guy that eventually might manage some of those things. How much fun do you have when you get to deprescribe a medication? Is that like the highlight of your
That never gets old. To this day, every time I stop a pill, I'm more excited than the patient because you prove like medication sometimes 20 years old and you stop it. And you can't put a price on that. So it's always, I'm giddy and excited when I see that. Speaking about doctors, they don't have to just be primary care. We have, as long as they're clinically oriented in internal medicine, whether they're endocrinologists, rheumatologists, emergency medicine. We've had applicants from all over who want to do this. If you're orthopedic surgeon who doesn't care about just kidding. But you want to have some clinical experience to understand basic stuff. Like some surgeons are so detached from medicine that they don't even know hydrochlorothiazide from basics. Not exaggerating a little bit, but people who want to do this, they can just apply and we'll look into it.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, we have a full training program for any physician, licensed physician or nurse practitioner applies. And I know a lot of PAs are upset, but we have to have people that have independent licenses. That's why we can't take on PAs, unfortunately. Yeah. So
nurse practitioner definitely and physicians.
Yeah, for sure. And do you, as far as your own personal experience, let me ask this. Now, when the patients get to see you, as opposed to maybe their normal doctor, do they seem fairly happy to get to see you? Does that seem to be a common theme?
They're always happy because they feel like they can talk to a specialist who understands them. Because when they go to their doctor, they're talking about low carb, carnivore, whatever it is. The doctor will dismiss them or scare them away or just write more prescriptions. So they feel heard. When I meet the patients, I meet them before they even enroll. In Revero, because we have to vet them, make sure they have the right, not everything, some things if we can't even manage or we shouldn't manage, so we reject a few patients. But generally, the meeting, I spend 45 minutes with these patients just to learn about them, understand where they're coming from, what their conditions are, answer the questions. Even the labs, the initial labs are covered by Revero before they even sign up. And once I approve them, they meet the coach and then they get started with the app and then the monitoring starts, and I drop in regularly with a chat, or if I have to pick up the phone and do a phone call. We do frequent labs every 3 months, and then let them know about the labs. So it's a dynamic, interactive approach. You can't find that in traditional care.
Yeah. When patients came to see me as a surgeon, they were always unhappy to see me because they broke something, or there was always a bad thing. But now they come to see you and they want to be there. They're excited to be there rather than. And that changes the dynamic, quite frankly, because when you got somebody that's just mad because they're injured, they're hurt, they're sick, or they just don't feel very good. Now you're like, hey, I got some hope now. And I think that's important. I feel like it's more empowering for the patient because it's not just you taking care of, you're kind of, would it be fair to say that you're empowering them to get healthy themselves in many ways?
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, they're doing it. They're the ones healing themselves. We're just giving advice. If they don't follow it, it doesn't matter what we do. They feel empowered, they feel motivated, they feel heard. And then there's a lot of feedback from patients, how much they love the interaction with the clinician or the coach, and then the progress they make. So definitely, hope is a big thing. If you're not hopeful, you're not going to even try. A lot of them are desperate, like last ditch effort. And some of them already found the light and they just want to help Revero excel, and then they join out of believing in the cause. But definitely a lot of sick people are already seeing benefits just in the past few months since we started.
Yeah, one of the things that I found out, I surveyed 12,000 people a couple of years ago, and I found out that those patients that felt supported either by their family, friends, and their physicians we're just more likely to be successful. And I think that going to a physician and say he's going to support me in my lifestyle, as opposed to a lot of people go there and the physician frowns upon that or tries to dissuade them from doing that. That in itself, just that act of being supportive, actually improves the outcomes. I think that's really cool to see. Let me ask you this question. Now, for several years now, you've experienced this sort of epiphany of healthcare in many ways. What would it take for you to go back to your old job? Is there any amount of money in the world they could pay you to get you back doing that stuff?
No, I love the experience. I think my clinical, I call it instinct, is because I've seen so much over the years, whether it's nephrology training or like being in the hospital. So I have a lot of gut sense when people are really sick and what needs to happen, but nothing. I'm done with that life. I will never go back. I'd rather just, I don't know, do something else completely and be a cashier somewhere rather than work in the hospital setting or a clinic. It is the system. Unless the system changes and we can do this in universities and big medical centers, I have zero interest in being part of it again, unless they want my help to change it. That's different.
Yeah, fair enough. I feel the same way. If I wanted to, I could go back to working as a surgeon. I'd have to spend some time getting back in the hang of it and working with somebody to do that. But I got zero desire to do that. I'm having so much more fun and quite honestly, making a big difference. Now, when you think back to all the patients you had admitted in the middle of the night for DKA and whatever, cellulitis and respiratory issues, how many of them do you think, if they would have had a Revero doctor on board years prior, would have avoided that? Do you think, what are your thoughts on that?
Most of them. You always have the people who, no matter what you tell them, they're not going to follow your advice. They're going to eat whatever they want. But for the most part, I think you would have avoided a lot of problems if you have the kind of support and coaching months in advance before they get in trouble.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I can remember I was a low carb guy myself personally and talking about it with my patients. And I remember there was one internal medicine guy who was a hospitalist and he was on the deal too. He knew it. And they always had this one guy who was like 450 pounds, kept getting readmitted for cellulitis, his legs, and he'd be in there with his oxygen tanks and just getting his IVs of antibiotics and whatever else. And his name was Payson. I said, Payson, man, this guy could be fixed. We just fix his diet. He was, yep, I know, but they couldn't do it. Just couldn't do it in the hospital. They just didn't have the resources.
It's worse in the hospital. The food is.
Yeah, the hospital is a place to go to get sicker in many cases, and the food is a problem and stuff like that. Let me ask you this: what are you looking forward to within Revero? Where are you looking forward to seeing us? I mean, I know we've got research we're going to be publishing. Obviously, we're hiring, we're scaling. Is there anything you're looking forward to?
Well, we have Ben Bickman in our corner, so it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, Ben's a great guy. Yeah, Ben's a great guy. He's a wonderful communicator and just such a nice, genuine, honest, hardworking, ethical guy. And I think that's what our whole team is. A lot of people, like you said, everybody that works for us is passionate about what we do. And you can see it. You can see it in our meetings. You can see it in the results.
Like, nobody has a chip on their shoulder. There's no ego in the team. Nature of a startup, you got to have to be flexible and things change. Things work this way. It doesn't work that way. So you always have to adapt and change. And that's a great team. Well, I look forward. I hope Revero becomes like the prototype for what standard of care should be and becomes standard of care that everybody copies. There's no secret with what we do. There's no proprietary product. It's just real, honest dietary advice. It doesn't break the bank or sell voodoo stuff. So I'm hoping that as Revero grows and physicians will probably gravitate more towards this and even leave traditional medicine to really heal people. And maybe that will change traditional medicine when they have more shortage and see where people are healing, that they may finally wake up and start to change.
Yeah, that's a great vision, I think. And I think that, and I should be clear on this. I've been a proponent of I eat a lot of meat, carnivore diet, but not all of our patients need to go there. Some do. Some are on carnivore when they get there. Some will end up there for a period of time. But we're focused, and we have we have more personalization. We've got feedback, add and subtract things as appropriate. So I think that's also a fun part and stuff we're learning from. We're collecting that data, and we'll be able to better and better tune that in as time goes.
Yeah, people should not be turned off by you or me. I'm more neo-carnivore, you're more 100% carnivore. Revero is more about whole food. Carnivore is not even in the wording of things. So it's really whole food. And then the elimination changes depending on the condition. If you're just diabetic or overweight, just dropping the carbs and raising protein does most of the work. And if you have autoimmune diseases, you can get a little bit more advanced. And the carnivore option, a lot of people coming to us on carnivore, they want to stay carnivore. We don't discourage them. Definitely, we help them stay carnivore. All good for you. But definitely, you don't have to get on carnivore diet to heal. Small tweaks.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, some will get there, some won't. Some will stay there, some won't. Just depends on how things do. Let me think. Anything else that comes to mind? We've got a few minutes left, Eli, and I just want to see if we've got anything else you wanted to.
People, again, now with politics going on and everybody's distracted, but people need to take responsibility for their own health. Nothing really changed. This is exciting and this is very hopeful, but if it doesn't work out that way, we shouldn't hold our breath. So people need to be proactive about that. Whether it's Revero on their own or someone else, doesn't matter. They need to start doing that. And physicians, clinicians, nurse practitioners, if you feel stuck and you're frustrated and burned out by the system, start looking outside the box and join companies like Revero, start helping people. And then once it takes one patient to get them off medication to be hooked and know how rewarding this work is, and I encourage you all to do it.
Yeah, like when you were doing your residency and starting early practice, did you ever envision you'd be in a place like this? Was there any point? I certainly didn't. God, you'd run me back 15 years ago, and I would never in a million years
have the slightest idea. I even ridiculed people who try to eat healthy. I didn't think it mattered. I did think, calorie. And when I was gaining weight, I started to doubt myself. Like, am I eating too many calories? Before you realize that this whole system is just doesn't work like that. So yeah, the only reason I got to this space is because I was miserable myself, health-wise, and then did it the hard way to learn about it. So I wish physicians don't have to do that. But if you look at everybody who's in this space, maybe 80% of them had their own personal struggle that they overcame with diet for getting there. So I don't know, people who are born healthy with the best genes, these are the hardest to convince because they think it's all about willpower and just eating less and moving more. Yeah,
and that's the same thing for me. I would have never come to this space had I not experienced my own sort of decline in health and wanted to do something about it, take it under my own hand, into my own hands. I was very fortunate that I found what works and have been able to share that now with many people. I guess we got a few more minutes left. Social media, you and I are both on social media. We both have fairly sizable accounts. We often get attacked for our beliefs. And I think it's what we are trying to do is genuine. We are genuinely trying to help as many people as possible in a way that we think works. And and the reason we think that is because we see it every day, right? That's the truth. And does that bother you when people call you out and say you're a zealot or an idiot or stupid or don't know what you're talking about? I get that all. Yeah. How does that impact you?
It doesn't really. When I first started, I was very new to the space. I'm not an extrovert, so putting myself out on social media was a big leap for me. So initially, when you hear criticism, you get defensive. But I quickly grew thick skin, and I laugh it off. I don't even respond 99% of the time. I don't care. I care about. I can't change everybody. I can lead people to water, horse to water, as you say. So people who want to learn and want to open their eyes, they find this very helpful. The amount of messages I get from people who I never met, they just heard my message, they implemented the changes, and then months later they text me what they did and how much they accomplished. It gives you goosebumps sometimes. So I don't really care about the negativity. This is not for everybody, but it is good for most people. I'll keep doing it.
Fair enough. I totally agree. Dr. Elie Jarrouge, thank you for chatting with me for a bit. Also, thank you for helping to implement our program at Revero. You've been a wonderful addition. I was super excited when you agreed to join us, and I look forward to big things in the future. So thanks a bunch and have a good rest of your day. I'm sure you got work to do, man. We'll let you go. Take care.